evening to our viewers of the show African Rising, the Diaspora Awakens. And your very famous quotation, I see this whenever you do videos that have to do with history. You are very passionate on the quotation from Marcus Garvey on roots. And could you elaborate why the narrative has been probably twisted to sort of exclude Africa from the civilization that we now feel as the young to be quite excluded? Because with inventions, for example, the Shadoof system, the mathematics that was started in Egypt, all those have been reinvented, repackaged, and we have been excluded. And we play second fiddle to the Western world, to the Eastern world. Yet, when now, if you follow some of the series that you have had with Bishop Maponga, I've seen you've done some quite educative analysis on the exclusion of our narrative. Delve deeper as to why it is important at this stage to actually correct the narrative in our own way for our people in the best of forms.
Yeah, I have tried to do an in-depth analysis, at least based on my research, in my episode on how, why, and when Europe twisted African history. And I mean, what the research shows is that it was not an accident. Most of us make the mistake of thinking, okay, the history that we're taught in school, yes, it's not accurate, but maybe because the proper research was not done. It's not true. The fact is that it was our history, the so-called world history that people of my generation, and that a lot of people of African descent in most parts of the world are still being taught, was deliberately skewed to erase the contributions of all other races and then project the race of the so-called contributions of the Europe, the people that we now know as Europeans, the white races. It was deliberately skewed, to project what they saw as their contribution, whilst erasing what contributions Africans and other people made. And the reason was this. Because Europe was going through, Europe would have perished without its colonizing and empire mission, with which it now amassed wealth, with which it now built, most of them now built their countries. Europe would probably not exist. It would be the third world of today if they did not go out, and conquer new lands, exploit, pillage, and pilfer, riches from continents like Africa, Asia, and the Americas, with which they now built up their economy. They are still enjoying the wealth of that era in human history. When they sent out their explorers, their monarchs actually invested in people go and find new places, go and find resources, and then with those resources, they were able to build their life. Now, in order for them to be able to do that, they had to convince themselves, that they were on a mission to civilize the world, because no other part of the world had the ability to do so. So, and in order to do that, they had to colonize the minds. How do you colonize the minds? By telling people that they are incapable, their ancestors are, did not contribute anything, and this idea of kind of what the eugenics try to do, to classify brilliance, ability, intellect with race. You know, that one race was born with superior ability and that, you know, the others don't have, and all of that. So all of these they're deliberate, which is why our work to uplift ourselves, to be able to stand up to these people, you know, must stem from a position of knowledge about who we are, who our ancestors were, what they contributed, and what we can contribute, so that we stop looking to the West or the East now, as the case may be with China, you know, and all of that. We stop looking to them to salvage us from, you know, this stranglehold, you know, that we're facing as Africans and people of Africans in diaspora.
As you were speaking now, I pick up two things. One of the things that perhaps was done is the imperialists and their governments or their empires, then their kings, funded these processes that have become our day-to-day life hundreds of years later. Starting with perhaps the Spanish expedition, when they were looking for the gold that they went to South America, eventually leading them to Africa. So how are we doing in terms of reinventing and reinvesting? Do we have scholars that are sitting down to rewrite? Because if I do get into a library today, what's very painful is that if I look for history for the Southern Africa, there are no authors of African descent. Or if they are there, it's just a few. So the narrative and the history is still not yet in our hands to possess. And we are talking of young people who have access to information, digital libraries, and how can we correct this narrative when we are still lagging behind in terms of the amount of work we should put to control the narrative? Over to you, man.
I think the approach has to be multi-pronged. Yes, there are not enough African people, you know, researching and challenging, you know, these so-called world histories. There are some. I mean, there have been. I mean, people like Chekanta Diop, and it's not a recent thing. It's just that we've never really been able to build the kind of critical mass where there are enough, you know, of us digging into these histories, publishing them, disseminating them, so that it doesn't just lie within academia alone, you know. And of course, some of the challenges there also have to do with the fact that the publishing industry, the academic research journals, most of them, you know, are still also controlled by universities in the West, in Europe, America, and so on and so forth. So there's that part. But we actually don't have to wait till the university level to start making the change, which is why it's important for us, even the stories we tell our children, if we come at them from an informed point of view, from an understanding that this is a world that has been deliberately skewed, you know, in a way that our children's ability to grow and actually, we're not even talking about equality, but we're talking about them even being able to actualize themselves. True. You know, they are going to have to work extra hard because of the way the world is skewed, and it should not be so. You know, so as parents, there are things we can do in the way we raise our kids with an awareness. of the problems of the world and, you know, why it's wrong. As community members, find out who is in charge of a curriculum for the primary, secondary education in your local government, in your city, in your state or province, country, wherever, and then mobilize yourselves to get them, you know, to make African history an integral, essential. It should be as important for the children to know about how Africa became the way it is, as it is important for them to know how to read, write, and do numeracy. It should be on the same level. And then, of course, continue to do the kind of things we're doing. The internet, social media, and all of that has kind of, in a little way, decentralize the power of being able to reach across borders and all of that. We need to take more advantage of